Studio A, here's John McIntyre.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. We are live. We're in color, high atop Television Hill, Studio A. Another remarkable program we have for you this evening. One of the region's most scintillating personalities is here in the studio tonight. She's lovely. She's talented. She's on WPTT 1360 AM from about noon to 3 every day. Her name is most familiar to just everybody knows Lynn Cullen.
Scintillating.
Scintillating, yes. Everybody knows Lynn Cullen, and that's because she's been in the market for 20 freaking years, so I hope they know who she is. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What if she sucked? Which she doesn't. But if she did, nobody might know who she is, even though she's been... You know who she is, right, Tyrone?
Yes, I do.
And you don't know anything, right?
I don't know too much.
There you go. Actually, you know quite a bit, I'm sure. This has nothing to do with most of the crap we have on this show. But tonight, it's not just any crap, it's quality crap. It's Lynn Cullen. What the hell was that? Oh, you don't know. Also tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take the pulse of the people of Pittsburgh. That's you, Mr. and Mrs. Human Being out there, and find out what you think the state of racism in Pittsburgh is. Why? Well, if you saw the show last night, you know that we were talking about the Patters of Peters, who declined to let a certain painting company come into their home because the certain painting company employed African-American painters. John Grafe is the white guy who owns the company, and he decided to sue them for discrimination. They're all trying to get $8 grand. That is, he wants $8 grand. A few of the painters want $8 grand apiece because that's how much you can get in this small claims kind of court. It has already been thrown out, the lawsuit that the Patters of Peters filed against Mr. Grafe. They wanted their $1,000 deposit back, and they do not get it back because they'd already given it to them, and apparently it's as simple as the fact that they didn't have a good reason to break the contract. In fact, they had a horrendous, shameful reason to try to break the contract. They admitted in writing, in print, in their brief submitted to the court, that it was because that the painting company employed African Americans. Do you believe that? You believe that, Tyrone?
I believe it, but it's...
You believe it, but it's still depressing, isn't it? So call in right now, won't you, Mr. and Mrs. Pittsburgh? You know, there was a guy, 333 PCNC, what do you think the state of racism is in Pittsburgh? I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. You got to dial, don't forget to dial the 412 or they'll come to your house and slap you. We had double the population 20 years ago, one area code. Now, I know about computers and faxes, but I would still think that would even out. You cut the population in half, but then the computers and faxes, it should still be the same amount. Now we have 17,000 area codes, and you got to dial all. The phone company sucks. That's who sucks. I can't believe that it's just because we have more. I don't know. I'm just skeptical. I have nothing to base it on. I have absolutely nothing to base my little conspiracy theory on. But wouldn't you think, Tyrone? They're just screwing it up. They just don't know what they're doing. They're just incompetent. That's why we have to dial all 10 numbers. It's not because there's a bunch more phone lines. I don't believe it. Where else are they doing this? I haven't even read about that. You know what I mean? Philadelphia, maybe? All right. Well, 333 PCNC, area code 412. What do you think of the state of racism in the city of Pittsburgh? Are there any of you who agree with them? There was a guy who called into the program last night. He said, look, it's a free country, and that means we're free to be racists. He didn't quite put it that succinctly. And he said you should be able to deny... you don't have to let anybody home who you don't want to. And of course, that's true, but I don't know. I think when you're hiring them to paint your house, it gets into all sort of a gray area and dangerous territory and whatever. What am I talking about? They're just despicable human beings. Let's face it. 333 PCNC, what do you think of the state of racism in Pittsburgh? Call now or I'll come out there and I will do nasty things to your offspring. Call me, 333 PCNC, area code 412. What do you think of the state of racism in Pittsburgh? Are your neighbors racist? Are you racist? Do you think there's nothing wrong with being racist? Do you think there's actually good reasons for racism? How do you define racism? Who's going to win the racism? Call me now, 412-333-PCNC. And if we got phone calls, we'll take them when we come back. And if we don't, then we'll just have a real short segment. And then it's the lovely and talented Lynn Cullen, straight ahead on Night Talk on the Pittsburgh Cable News Channel. Back on Night Talk, ladies and gentlemen, in view of the Patters of Peters and their alleged racism and alleged discrimination, we've decided to query you on the state of racism in Pittsburgh. And let's go to the phone line, shall we? You can still call us at 412-333-PCNC. Here is Susan. Susan, what do you think the state of racism is in Pittsburgh?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and as far as this situation goes, it is really a stupid reason not to have somebody paint your house just because of what they look like. That has nothing to do with whether they can paint or not. But I don't know. Hopefully that stuff is gone. But on the other hand, I did notice different times. My husband went to Pitt Law, and I noticed in some of the newspapers and the publications within the school, a lot of people in the African-American community prefer to patronize businesses that are run by black people, which, for the good of their community. So I don't know if you'd even call that racism. I guess it's just what you think personally.
Well, I agree that there's nothing wrong, I guess. Well, I don't know if I agree with that or not, but it certainly is a true fact of society that we prefer to hang out with our own for better or for worse.
Well, I think it's a cultural thing.
To a
I
large
guess people
extent.
figure that, people that have the same culture as yourself. But, as far as the house painting thing goes, I think it's stupid. But, again, your home is your castle, so if you're weird, that's up to you, I guess.
Yeah, but you would never do that. You would never find out that there are black people coming and cancel the contract, right?
No, who cares?
Exactly. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
She was awfully well-informed, intelligent, and well-spoken for a Night Talk viewer, Tyrone. The hell's up with that? Here is Martha. Martha, how are you this evening?
Okay, can I be highly intelligent and well-spoken too, though?
Well, compared to me, I'm sure.
I'd like to make a comment as a middle-income white woman with 3 children living in Pittsburgh. My children are biracial. I've had numerous experiences with racism here in Pittsburgh, too numerous to get into, from the doctors at the hospital to children on the street spitting in my 7-year-old daughter's face, calling her a nigger.
Wow.
And
so the state of racism is bad.
Well, I've talked to people online in the computers, and they've said that the greater Pittsburgh area, the tri-state area here, has the largest concentration of hate groups in the United States.
Yeah, we had some sort of a credible organization that will back you up on that on the program, I don't know, a couple of years ago.
But having never lived anywhere else, I thought it was just typical. This degree of racism was typical everywhere across
that may be one reason we're losing population. I don't know if it's a major reason, but both blacks and whites and whatever else there are, depending on how specifically you want to categorize people and put them in a little nutshell, maybe leaving Pittsburgh in the area. And what do you think? You don't care.
I don't know. I have
in
my
droves
family
for that
here.
reason. Go ahead.
I have my family here, and they're all very supportive. They accept my children for who they are, and I teach my children to have pride in who they are.
Hey, let me ask you, can I ask you a real dumb question that's none of my business, and you can feel free to just say none of your business, you evil punk?
Okay.
Are these adopted? Did you have...
They're biological children.
Okay, so you were with a partner who was of another race.
Yes.
Did you think about that before you did it? And you know, do you...
Yes, I did. My ex is a black man, and when you're in love, it doesn't matter.
And you expected adversity, but maybe not as much as you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, listen, Martha, I'm glad you called because it was an interesting call, but I'm sorry to hear you're going through that.
Well, life goes on.
So how are your kids handling it?
Who they are.
Right before I let you go, how are your kids handling it?
Oh, they're fine. They get along with white children and black children. We have all different races come to our house and play, and we're in middle-class America.
Yeah, isn't that the
wish
truth?
there could be a little bit more harmony.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Here's Joe on the line. Joe, what's your view on the state of racism in Pittsburgh?
How you doing?
Okay.
Hey, my question is, if this was the other way around...
Well, it would definitely be just as wrong. If African Americans didn't want white painters to come in their house and tried to cancel the contract as a result, at least in my opinion, it would be just as bad and just as evil and all of that.
See, I think we have racism both ways out there, but I think it's shown more that the black races, the whites against the black races out there, has showed up more than vice versa, and you do see the other out there too.
Yeah, I guess it's just because they're the minority. I don't disagree with you that
because I've seen it. I've been on the other side.
Yeah.
And seen this happen where they don't want white people coming in because of that. You know what I mean? But it's not put out on the TV. It's not, hey, then you go buy...
You mean you went into a store and they said...
Go into properties to work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And, I mean, it's a shame it's that way. I don't agree with it, but, I mean, it's not publicity as much as what it is the other way.
All right, Joe, thanks for your call.
Thanks.
I always feel like that call is somebody who doesn't like black people and is just mad and always has to say that because they just think that racism against black people is justified, and that's their lame excuse. I don't know why. I'm not saying that there isn't so-called reverse racism, or I suppose you could just say racism is racism. I'm not saying there aren't African Americans who don't look at whites suspiciously just because they're white. I think that's equally wrong. But there's got to be more racism white against blacks just because there's more of us than them, at least at this point, at least in this country. No? I don't know. Pat is on the line. Pat, what do you think of the state of racism in Pittsburgh?
I think there's a lot of racism both ways around, like whites against blacks and blacks against whites.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong, and I think it's that what happened with the painter. I think that's real wrong. I think it should be. I think it's like I grew up in a multicultural neighborhood. It's got a lot of different cultures, McKeesport, and I think there's not much racism here because because most people know, like have grew up around different cultures.
Well, then it's the miracle community. We should all move to McKeesport.
Yes, but in like other communities, because I have family in other communities that are like racist, because they're like in better communities, they think lower of other cultures and stuff, and I think it's just wrong.
Well, good for you. How old are you?
I'm 14.
Well, when you grow up, teach the rest of those idiots not to be racist, will you?
Yes.
Thank you. Not that you're not grown up already. What, sir? Oh, Scott is on the line. Hi, Scott. How are you? What do you think of the state of racism in Pittsburgh? Hey, Scotty.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. You're on the air. You're on the air. Okay, let's go to Ray. Ray, how are you? Ray.
Hello.
You're on TV!
Fantastic.
All right.
I just wanted to say that I think that there's a lot of racism that carries on from generation to generation due to stereotypes that I think can be improved upon. I see a lot of things about black and whites and Latinos and whites and Asians and whites, but I think it goes both directions.
I would agree with that. But don't you, certainly there's a history in the country of a great deal of discrimination against African Americans, well documented, especially from the origins of their traveling to the country. You would agree with that as well?
Very, very much so.
Yeah. All right, well, so what do we do about it?
Well, I think you have to just travel a bit more and get out of the city of Pittsburgh. I think that people that have lived in other cities coming to this particular city have a much more open view.
I know. Is that the problem? The people coming in, there aren't many of them, and the people who can't take it anymore are blowing this pop stand?
Well, I would say that that's true. I've moved out and come back, love the town, but I would say that in other cities, it's much more ethnically diverse than Pittsburgh, and I think that that really needs to be broadened a bit. And I think through the addition of high-tech companies such as Seagate moving into town and CMU and Pitt and the medical industry, that's going to happen whether the long-time lifers of Pittsburgh like it or not.
Ray, thanks for your call. I hope you're right. I think here, last call we'll take on this here is Joe. Joe, how you doing this evening? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one, I was born and raised here in Pittsburgh, moved out for 13 years down to St. Louis, Missouri, and if you think it's bad here, you ought to go down there. It is really bad. Nobody understands. Go to these other towns, visit them, and find out what it's like.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for calling, Joe. Yeah. All right, once again, we find a profound note on which to end. Lynn Cullen, straight ahead on Night Talk. We'll get her thoughts on this on the Pittsburgh Cable News Channel. Stay with us. See the shining beacon of hope on WPTT radio, whatever that means, from noon to 3 every day, 1360 a.m. Lynn Cullen is here, ladies and gentlemen.
What's wrong? I didn't powder my nose? What do you mean a shining beacon of...
I don't know. When all around you is racist and thuggish and people are dying and children are crying and eggs are frying, it's always good. You appear and
Yes.
the clouds part and everything is hunky-dory.
Lord.
How come you're not coming to the anniversary party on August 6th? We're having the NightTalk 5th anniversary party. It's Monday night at Penn Brewery, where they make the, I'm getting tired of saying brewery, but Penn Brewery? Penn Brewery? Brewery. And Lynn's not coming, and all the movers and shakers are going to be there. It's Monday night, August 6th. Be there, be square, don't miss it.
I don't like coming to your parties.
Everybody else likes it.
Well, it's just, it's all the same people. It's like work.
We're going to have different people this time.
No, it's the same old. You guys could, right now, tell what the guest list was. It's every person who can't get their face on TV.
We're going to have more congressmen this time. We're going to have more comedians.
Oh, that's sure going to get me there. More congressmen.
Gino and Emilio, who run the Zazu Salon, They're going to bring like 10 hot babes just to stand around? Because last time everybody yelled at me because we didn't have enough women there.
So you're getting hot babes
that's what they
to
said.
stand around?
So that way
That's not what they meant. They meant women of substance.
Well, find me some.
Well, it's Pittsburgh.
No, I know there's
Let's
plenty.
talk about sexism instead of racism. Jeez.
Okay, let's talk
No, let's not. It's so darn depressing. And I agree with you. People who call... maybe it's like this everywhere, but anytime this issue comes up, racism, it is like clockwork that the callers call in and say things like what you heard,
Right,
which
like,
is...
it's the black people, they're really the mean
You know,
ones.
it goes both ways, and no one ever mentions that blacks hate whites, and the first woman who said, you know, I don't approve of it, but, you know, a person's home, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. There's like this... First of all, she's understanding of the racists. Then there's these apologists for racists. I mean, you know, as soon as you shine the light on white racism, they have to say, oh, blacks hate whites too, blacks hate whites too. Refusing to acknowledge the problem in their own community. It makes me nuts. And it's why there's never any progress around here. There's a defensiveness and ignorance and inability to rise to the occasion and deal with the reality that racism is rampant in Pittsburgh.
I have said the utterly tasteless line before that if there had to be mass murders, I was glad one was black and one was white, and they were both motivated by racism, so that we wouldn't have riots and tension and even.
Isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw that this Harvard University released the report about the resegregation of American schools. You didn't see it?
I saw an article about it today. No, I didn't see much about it.
It's a big surprise. I mean, anyone who has children in public schools especially will acknowledge the fact that there's an incredible resegregation. Most black children in this country go to school to schools where 90% of the population is black. Most white children in this country go to schools where, especially suburban children, they go to schools that are almost overwhelmingly white. And this resegregation occurring at an incredible rate exactly when the population is becoming more multi-ethnic. So I often wonder, when all those people who think their children are getting such a marvelous education out there in the suburban school districts, how they define education. I mean, my idea of education is preparing your child to be a success in the real world.
So how old is your son,
Suburban
Sam?
America is not the real world. It's blindingly homogeneous, ethnically, socially, every way. And those children who might have gotten might have more money spent on them, per pupil, and have better campuses and all that stuff, are going to be sort of, bewildered when they find themselves working and dealing with people who are Americans but who don't look like them.
How old is your son, Sam?
9.5.
Do you have talk? I mean, is 9.5 too young to have discussions about racism? Or?
Oh, heavens no.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, I think when I was 9.5, I wasn't smart enough. But they're smart at like 3 now. So what do you tell him about this? Does he know about the painters, for example, or do you discuss?
I don't think we've talked about the painters,
Okay.
but no, he's very aware of it. He's very aware of it. I mean, he lives in my house. Why wouldn't he be aware of it?
Right.
I talk to him about racism. We talk about religious bigotry. We talk about sexism. We talk about gender discrimination. Some of what you were, I don't let my son or anyone who's over at our house, for instance, use the word gay as a pejorative, which is the leading pejorative now among kids. Oh, that's so gay. They don't even know what they're saying. I mean, my son said it once. I said, what does that mean? Do you know what gay is? No. Well, if you're a gay young person, you know what it is.
So how do you correct them? When you don't let them use the pejorative, how do you say, don't use that word, don't you know what that means? Or do you just say,
no,
I don't want to hear that word in my house? Or
No. We talk about what gay is, that it's people who love. I said, how is something that has to do with loving another person something that's a bad thing? So when a man loves a man or a woman loves a woman, that is considered gay.
Right. I just like the latter
And there's
better.
nothing wrong with that. And in fact, he knows gay people. I have friends that are gay, and I said, you know.
Does he know they're gay?
Yes.
Okay.
So-and-so's gay, or this one's gay. Do you think they're bad people? No, he says, stunned, because they're wonderful people. And I said, then we don't use the word gay as a bad word, ever.
So you'll give him this wonderful upbringing, and then he'll meet these racist homophobes as he grows older, and it'll just be.
Well, he's got to know they're out there. That's right. No. Yeah. Oh, so you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that you should do the opposite. That there'll be a better outcome.
There's the other thing, you know, just you were saying the word suck before.
Yeah.
I consider that one of the most horrific words.
I'm sorry. If I'd remembered that, you've told me that before.
And
it's part of my vocabulary
I know his
now.
kids say that now, and parents say it, and everybody says it.
Right.
And when kids say, that sucks, in my house, I say, no. You're
You mean
not.
because of the origin of the expression?
Yeah,
It's revolting?
well, they might not know where it comes from. I'm not an idiot. I know what suck means.
Yeah.
It's crude. There's such crudeness everywhere. There's such inappropriateness, and parents are part of the problem. Now, that makes me sound like a conservative and like I'd get in bed with Dr. Laura, right?
I would pay good money for pictures of that. If you're thinking about that.
But this is why, this is why the Republicans make me crazy, trying to make a partisan issue out of people's concern for, the fact that our society is going to hell in a handbasket.
All right, so you're not getting in bed with Dr. Laura?
I certainly hope not. I believe she's been in bed with a lot of people, but she ain't getting in bed with me.
All right. That's the spirit. Have some standards, for crying out loud. Back in a moment with Lynn, Cullen on Night Talk. Stick around. Is here, one of the few successful liberal radio talk show hosts in the country, probably. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple in New York and Philly or something, but there ain't many of them around here, if any. I guess there's one other, at least, I think. Mike Romine,
but not in. I know Mike is pretty liberal, but he's not on. He's not their A team.
Well, right. You're right. They've put him in a time slot that they don't consider their prime time.
Right. I mean, what that station, the blowhard station, does is they put liberals, blacks, and women in what I call the weekend and night ghetto.
My girlfriend was infuriated by Rush Limbaugh today.
Oh, today?
Yes, I know.
Today?
Well, she never listens.
Well, I don't even think he was on today. I think.
Well, you're right. Wait a minute. That's
was.
right, and he's not back till Thursday. Mm-hmm. So I wonder who the heck she was listening to.
Well, she was listening to that hand-ratty jerk.
But she knows she should know the difference between the voices.
Well,
anyway, whoever said it said that feminism was unattractive women's plot to get into the mainstream. That by creating an issue out of it, that they gain attention, and then they somehow are able to. Isn't that a horrible? Can you get any more sexist than that?
No, I mean that's just that's if that is the argument that they're reduced to, then methinks they've lost the war.
You mind if I throw in some of these callers here, since they're all waiting to talk to you?
Certainly not.
Here is. What happened to my? Oh, there. Gino, how are you?
Hey, good evening. My two favorite liberals. Lynn, you get on here and you pontificate about the schools falling apart and the white people taking their kids out of school. Do you have any kids in schools that are where there's a lot of black kids? They're unruly. They're terrible on the bus. Not all of them, but a good portion of them.
My son goes to a Pittsburgh public school that is, yes, definitely racially integrated.
The minute you criticize a black, you're a racist.
Pardon me?
The minute you criticize, I'm talking about people like me, the minute you criticize a black, you tell the parents...
But it's interesting that you focus, Gino, on the black children misbehaving on the bus. Like white kids, I'll sit there with their hands in their lap on buses?
Listen, Lynn, when you talk to the parents, you're not put down and called a racist. The worst thing you can be a child molester, you can be anything, but you can't be a racist. And you guys are great for pontificating, but you have no answers. You got to get in the real world.
I'll tell you where the answer is, Gino. It's in your own heart, and I don't do open heart surgery. I don't know what to do about it.
It's not in my heart.
Yes, it is.
Someone has to sit the leaders of the black community down and tell them.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute. So racism is the problem with the black community. If they weren't so god-awful, then there wouldn't be racists.
No, Lynn. See how you're...
What are you saying? What do you mean somebody has to sit the black leaders down? Somebody has to... You look into your own heart, that's all.
I look into my heart.
You're part of the problem,
you're
not part of the solution.
I care about this country, and I care about the future. The black kids have just as much right to be here as anyone else, but they have to get an education. If you're too smart today, you're acting too white. I know I'm not going to change your mind, but my side of the story has to be listened to too.
What is your side of the story again?
My side of the story is that they have to sit down and you have to tell the black leaders that they have the problem, that the kids have to learn that when you criticize a kid, when you correct them, you're not a racist. You know, simple.
Well, no,
things.
of course, not if you're just telling a kid on the bus to sit down, if that's all you're saying.
No, I'm talking about misbehaving in class.
Well, but I'm sure all of the kids are disciplined whether it works or not, are they not?
Pardon me?
They're not. You're saying they're not disciplining the black kids, they're only disciplining the white kids?
You ask some teachers sometime. Ask how the parents react, if they react at all.
All right, Gino, thanks for your call.
Listen, I think what Gino's talking about is a problem with not just black parents. It's some black parents and some white parents. You discipline a child at school, and rather, we've all heard that.
Oh, yeah. Your sister's a teacher. I got 3 teachers in my family. Parents of all race, creeds, and colors don't think their kids could possibly do anything wrong.
Couldn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And but it's just this thing where, I think Gino's more apt to note when it's a black child or a black parent. The problem has nothing to do with black or white. It has to do with, with parents today in general. There are a lot of lousy parents out there. A lot of lousy parents.
Yeah, parents suck. That's what I say. All right, let me throw in a quick break. And back with more of your phone calls for Lynn, Cullen. When we return on Night Talk, don't go anywhere. Lynn Cullen from WPTT Radio is here. Are you still enjoying the job? How long have you been doing this talk radio thing?
Do you know, I don't have a clue. What do you think? About 13, 14 years on radio?
If you say so. 13 or 14? I've only been here 5.
I'm always amazed at people who remember dates. I mean, I don't even remember, they'll say, well, I've been doing it since June 17th, 1982. I don't even know what year I started doing radio, but I think it was like about 88.
Do you ever feel all talked out? You're just sick of listening to yourself talk? You've heard all of your opinions so many times that you just don't care anymore?
Well, I guess sometimes there's that sense. However, life keeps changing, and so there's different issues to... and now I'm constantly changing, the way I look at the world, changing even my opinion.
Your sister, she's on a lot, but she doesn't get paid a dime, does she?
No, she does not get paid a dime.
Isn't it time to start sending her 20 bucks?
She's not paid a lot. She's paid she's on 1 hour a week. What's that worth?
That's, I don't know, something.
She can stop anytime she wants.
All right. More calls. We don't have to talk about racism for the whole hour.
No, we certainly don't.
Let's see what you guys want to talk about. Here's Carl. Carl, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. Just something Ms. Cullen said about education, the definition of education. I think it's exactly what she says. You go to a lot of different cities, a lot of bigger cities, small cities. Outside of Pittsburgh, you see that people take education a lot more serious. They take it as far as racial diversity. You don't have the same problems that you would have like you have in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's just weird. And this is like one of the only places that has that problem.
Well, it's not the only place, but there was this study that came out of Harvard the other day that actually did look at the numbers. And the most resegregated school systems are, guess where? In the Northeast United States, Pennsylvania, one of the worst states. Do you know where the most integrated schools continue to be?
Where?
The South.
Yeah, that is true. I've been down south, and
so a lot of it's so bizarre. People up here, they're in the north, so they think, well, we're not racist. It's those people in the south that are the racists. Wrong. They dealt with their racism. They did live together. They integrated, and they're a more integrated society than we are up north. It's just amazing. It's an extraordinarily segregated city, this city.
I honestly think that's going to be the thing that's going to get us on the map. It's really going to put us on the map. It's going to be something that's bigger than both the stadiums and the new convention center. If we can just get a little more diverse when it comes to other nationalities. I mean, if we don't do it, then everybody from 40 on down is going to suffer.
Well, they won't come. They won't come. The fact of the matter
Exactly.
is...
They won't come. They won't come to this city.
Who's excuse me.
Carl, thanks for your call.
Yeah, Carl, thanks. John, who's the guy from CMU that talks about, energizing the city?
The Economist guy?
No, he's a young guy who talks about immigration being important.
I don't know. I know what you mean, but I don't know who you
You've had him
mean.
on a million times.
I've only had him on once.
Who?
I can't remember his name. He was a handsome dude. I remember
yes,
that.
he is.
That's
He's
all I
good
remember about it.
looking,
Yes.
and all
Same
that
guy.
stuff. He's very good.
Anyway, what does he say?
But he says exactly what Carl was saying, which is if Pittsburgh is going to make it, there's no assurance we ain't going to make it constituted as we are right now, with this very segregated community where African Americans feel a hopelessness, where we don't have an integrated managerial core, integrated racially and with gender and all kinds of other stuff. He says the cities that clearly are taking off are cities with large, believe it or not, gay populations, because it shows a city is embracing of different
people. Gay people like to go out and spend money too, so it makes it lively.
Yeah, well, they do.
I hope that's an okay stereotype to perpetuate.
Well, whatever. I mean,
I just mean they like to have fun, don't they?
I don't know.
I shouldn't generalize like that.
Why do we
I
have
just
to talk
picture
about this?
a bar full of happy gay people buying lots of drinks.
Oh, please. I am
Nothing wrong with
I mean, I love this city. This is the city I chose to live in. But if there's one thing about the city that makes me insane, it's this subject. So you're making me very unhappy.
All right, yeah, we don't have to talk about it much more. It's depressing because, whatever, I don't want to be so pessimistic.
It's depressing because of the denial of the populace.
It's completely hopeless.
No,
it's so deeply embedded in I don't know if it's the majority of the human beings, but it's certainly a substantial portion of the population. Those of us who feel the way we do can yammer all we want.
No,
nobody cares.
It doesn't make any difference.
Cyril Wecht and Jim Roddy can have a commission on hate and issue 50 reports that'll sit on a shelf. That doesn't matter.
No.
There's nothing that you hear from the political leadership unless there's some sort of an outrageous act, and then they make some noise temporarily.
You know, it's interesting. Somebody said, who was the guy who called earlier? It was from McKeesport. He's the 14-year-old kid. And he said that there, you have this mix of white and black, and everybody sort of lives together. And I've often felt that in the actually lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, there is more integration, there is more mixing. In this city where you really see the separation is upper middle class. It's all you guys in the burbs.
But you're very anti-burbs. Isn't that a form of...
prejudice?
Yes, in and of itself.
It's a strongly held opinion.
Well, how come yours is a strongly held opinion and theirs is prejudice?
It's my personal opinion. I'm a city person. I'm an urban person. I would roll over and die in 2 seconds if I had to live in the suburbs with all those people who looked the same and, drove the same cars and had big green expanses and had to get in my minivan to go everywhere I wanted.
There should be a reality show that makes you live in the suburbs for like a month. You and your son follow you around with a camera.
And we'll trade houses with the suburban family who have to come live in the city.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well.
But it'll never happen. All right, let's take a break. You know what? When we come back, if you don't mind, callers who are holding and anybody else in the world, let's talk about sexism instead of racism.
Oh, no.
You don't want to talk about that?
What do we have to talk about?
All right.
Hate and
all right, let's talk about
for?
something pleasant, and we'll figure it out between now and then when we return on Night Talk.
Let's trash the Tribune Review. Okay.
Back on Night Talk, ladies and gentlemen, Dickie Cougar Mellanscafe, owner of the Tribune Review, leader of the vast right-wing conspiracy, has seen fit to publish an editorial in today's newspaper that hacked off Ms. Lynn Cullen because it trashes the beloved and noted and much admired Katharine Graham, publisher of the Washington Post, who died, was it yesterday or today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
It didn't just hack off me. I've actually had people come up to me and say, with like a look of such disbelief, did you see the editorial? It's hard to even talk about this, and I don't even want to give it much voice. This is the most mean-spirited, ugly piece of genuine garbage I've ever seen in what considers itself a major newspaper. I don't know who wrote it. I believe Cullen McNichol is the editorial page editor. I'm going to assume Mr. McNichol wrote this. He should be ashamed of himself. I think most of us learned not to speak ill of the dead. This kind of, he slanders her. You can't slander the dead, and he knows it, and he can't libel the dead. This is, there's innuendo in here that she somehow murdered her husband,
yes,
maybe.
this from the newspaper that gave us all this drivel about the Vince Foster conspiracy theories, as if he'd been murdered by the Clintons, which even Ken Starr vindicated the Clintons from any involvement in that.
It's unconscionable, it's reckless, it shows the total lack of integrity of the editorial board of the Tribune Review, and
Do you want to read that part about
this is just garbage. I'm just stunned by it. Read here. This is where
right.
I mean, you just want to swoon.
Referring to Katharine Graham, she married Felix Frankfurter's brilliant law clerk, Philip Graham, who took over running the Post, which her father purchased at a bankruptcy sale. Graham built the paper but became estranged from Kay. She had him committed to a mental hospital, and he clearly was intending divorce when she signed him out and took him for a weekend outing, during which he was found shot.
Okay, now just back up and do that. He was clearly intending to divorce her. She signs him out of the mental hospital, and he turns up dead. Then they go on to say
his death was ruled
a suicide. You're supposed to wink at that.
Within 48 hours, she declared herself
and within 48 hours, she declared herself the publisher. So the innuendo there is obvious, unless you're, have the IQ of a philodendron. It is that she knew he was going to divorce her. She got him out of the mental hospital. She blew him away, made it look like a suicide, and then she took over the paper. Never mind, by the way, that it was her paper anyway. It was her father's newspaper. He was publishing it only because he married into the family, and girls didn't publish.
Right. In fact, from what I read today, Catherine, her father insisted that her husband own more stock because no self-respecting woman could own more stock than the guy.
Exactly.
He had to be the boss.
I have to tell you, there is not a reputable historian, human being, journalist around who would not retch reading this. And we aren't even talking about the earlier stuff where they red bait her, where they essentially accuse her of being a commie sympathizer. It's mind-boggling. It's untrue, it's mind-boggling, and it shows the mean-spiritedness of these kind of hardcore conservatives. They are shameless and disgusting. And Cullen McNichol, you should be drummed out of the journalistic fraternity. You are a disgusting human being if you wrote this.
Yeah, well, the paper, as you know, has a history of lousy journalism and bad conspiracy theories. It was recently documented in an article in Brill's Content magazine.
Yeah.
We had Lynn Margolis on the show, a former Tribune reporter. We know that Dickie Cougar Mellon-Scaife hates Arlen Specter, so there was a major hearing in Pittsburgh, a congressional hearing, sponsored by Senator Specter, and the editor was ordered to take all references to Arlen Specter out of that article because Mr. Scaife hates Mr. Specter.
It's unbelievable.
So it is despicable journalism. But they're our newspaper exchange partner.
They are.
They're the Channel 11's newspaper exchange partner because KD has the Pitt Post Gazette as the newspaper.
So
exchange.
left you
There's
with,
nobody left. Yeah, I guess we could
John
be in
Cougar
Pittsburgh's newspaper and exchange partner.
You should be the partner of City Paper or in Pittsburgh. You really should. I mean, this is disreputable. Cullen McNichol, I hope you fry for this.
Well, nothing. I don't know if he wrote it or maybe he did. But
well, if he didn't write it, he certainly signed off on it. I don't care who wrote it. The fact is, he is the editor of the editorial page.
Well, they also imply there's an implied criticism because she lived a wealthy lifestyle growing up, but certainly Mr. Scaife did as well.
Oh yeah, they keep saying in the earlier parts of the editorial, life of privilege, married she was her father was a multi-millionaire, and as if that's like what? So, huh? And here they are, putting out Richard Mellon-Scaife's personal little paper. Unbelievable. I mean, I'm really so dumbfounded about it. I can't even.
Did you talk about it on your show today?
Yes, a little bit at the end. If McNichol were here, I'd punch him. I would. I'd punch him. I'd attack him physically. That's how angry I feel. And I don't know Kay Graham from a hole in the ground. It is just the outrageousness of this slime. Slime.
So did you? We haven't got much time left, but the vice president was here the other day. He was pushing his energy policy.
Pushing his pathetic and absolutely indefensible energy policy, while at the very same moment he's asking that because his electric bills in his mansion are up a little high, he's insisting that Congress
let the Navy pay for it.
Yeah, send the bills over to the Navy.
But I guess the Navy owns the House.
Yes.
Well, the Navy.
He was appropriated over $40,000 to pay the electric bills.
But it's like $180,000, I think, the electric bill.
And this is a guy who made what last year? $36 million in the oil industry. Yeah. As for you, he says, if you don't like your utility bills, turn off the lights. Quote. End quote. That's what your vice president said. You pay for it. And, you know, it's sort of like that ticker thing he has, this thing that shocks him every time he drops dead, which apparently is 3 times a day. He sort of dies, and they have to jolt him back into consciousness. The fact of the matter is, and the president, this idiot, we have our president, Forrest Gump, says, and I hope that you all take Vice President Cheney's example to heart and do preventive measures for your health.
But we can't afford the pacemaker.
43 million Americans, Mr. President, have no health insurance. And the vast majority who do, their health insurance wouldn't cover something like that, which is preventive, which is just in case. They have to be on death's door to get a $30,000 thingamabob stuck in their chest. These guys are so out of it when it comes to the reality of Americans' everyday lives. They're worse than I thought they'd be. They're more laughable than I thought they'd be.
One-termers, I tell you.
Oh, without a doubt.
All right, gotta let you go, but it was great.
Always a pleasure.
Just great. You see that? That was great. Back in a moment with the scintillating commentary. Stick around, won't you? Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's commentary. In a previous life, before I got paid to yammer uncontrollably about whatever there was to yammer about on a particular day, I was a so-called TV journalist. Over time, I learned how fearful some of my bosses were when it came to messing with powerful people. If you report something bad about them powerful, they will call your boss and attempt to quash any future installments. When a governor called and yelled at me years ago, my boss backed me up. When a major utility company issued a 5-page analysis of a series I did on air pollution, rebutting point by point what I had reported, my boss backed me up. I was spoiled early on because the longer I was in the business, the more bosses I ran into who weren't necessarily willing to back me up. As a consumer reporter, I once persuaded a car dealership to allow a customer to return a lemon because the contract stated they could if they did it immediately. But my boss told me not to put it on TV. Since the whole idea of this TV consumer unit was to pat ourselves on the back every time we saved the day for the consumer, I was most puzzled. Then, of course, I learned the story was killed because the car dealership was a major advertiser. Let's travel now away from the sometimes seamy shallow world of local TV journalism into the stratosphere of Washington big-time print journalism. Washington Post publisher Katharine Graham is dead, and I'm bummed about it. She wasn't just up against some leisure suit hacks at a car dealership when the Watergate story began to unfold. She was against the Nixon White House, which raised the art of political espionage and retaliation to a whole new level in the late 60s and early 70s. Are you old enough to remember when Attorney General John Mitchell said that Katie Graham would get her, quote, tit caught in a big fat ringer if the Post published the story that Mitchell controlled a secret fund to spy on Democrats while he was Attorney General? These were intimidating, powerful, evil forces, but Katharine Graham was fearless and didn't back down. The fact that the revolting Mr. Mitchell had to resort to the breast metaphor shows Graham was battling sexism as well as intimidation. There was a time in America when people actually looked up to journalists as purveyors of truth. Now reporters are believed to be just as slimy as the car salesman who killed my story. Maybe I'm romanticizing about the days when the news media was not automatically labeled as scum. Maybe I've watched the movie All the President's Men too many times. But in a world where women are stigmatized and ostracized for literally and figuratively lacking cojones, Katharine Graham showed she had a pair. And they were big, and they were not made of brass, they were made of steel. And that is commentary, ladies and gentlemen. One of the few good journalists left on the earth, David Johnson.
No. You have to say that, and thank you for having to say that. Hey, your bosses back you up on this show.
They let me get away with murder. It's
they do.
Ridiculous.
I must say.
I should send them flowers or something.
You say a lot of nutty stuff, and you are allowed to continue to say
I hear nothing about it, yeah.
You're right about Katharine Graham. Yeah, big loss. Big loss.
Yeah, just as Lynn said, I didn't know her either. It's not like I went to tea with her, but, you know, from everything you read, she was quite a giant.
She made the Washington Post.
There you go.
Literally, yeah.
Yes. All right. Tony Norman tomorrow night. Have a great evening. David is straight ahead with the 10 o'clock news. So long.